a mandate about this combined sewer overflow. MWRD just recently came in agreement with the EPA about that. So they've been working very diligently on that. And I'm going to talk a little about the rain blockers. So the whole idea is we have about 250,000 catch basins. And those are those structures on the side of the streets that hold the water. And so they can typically hold about 900 gallons depending on their depth. But the whole idea is they have about an 8-inch pipe that goes from that into the main sewers. One of the programs we initiated years ago was to actually put a restrictor on that to slow the water down from going to the catch basins to the main sewers. So here's the big things you actually have to know about water to be a water engineer. It is one, gravity is never fails, ever. Gravity is always in play, and water finds its own level. Water always finds its own level. So that's the big thing. So as you slow that water into the sewer, that's to prevent the sewer from surcharging. Because if water finds its own level, what is lower, your basement or the street? Your basement. Hence, when water finds its own level, it will find your basement before it finds the street. So you want to keep as much water on the street as you can to prevent the sewer from surcharging. And I'm going to show you how that model works at the very end. So this is just, again, sewer, and this is a lot of the inputs they have to put into how they build this model. This is just the local sewers. And this is sort of showing how this works. So as we were saying, this is the main sewer, and this is the water coming from your combined, in your house, right? And it comes out to here, and then obviously this is all the water that's captured on the street. And this is where we're trying to restrict the water from the catch basins to getting to here. Because if this water starts to surcharge, the first place it hits is your basement, not to the street level. That's why we want to keep as much water on the street. So water on the street is a good thing, not a bad thing. So we use this model with the trunk system, ground elevation, a lot of the local sewer capacity, the trunk capacity, the depth of the pipe, various factors go into looking at what the risk factors are for basement flooding. So this is where we're looking at red is bad, green is good. So that just shows you we are underserved on the local sewer system here on the lakefront in this area. So that's where we try to go now after these areas to try and reduce it. Because the whole idea when we're looking in this local sewer system is where can we make the biggest impact in terms of area served? How can we maximize the total area served by upsizing the local sewer? The challenge is because the whole sewer system runs by gravity, right? Remember? Principle number one, you can fix a problem locally, but downstream, if you don't have a big enough pipe, it's not going to solve the problem. So you have to look at the entire system because it's all fed by gravity. So solving a local problem here, if you haven't solved it potentially downstream, you haven't solved the problem. So obviously, previously we were limiting computing powers, limited in local areas, so we came up with a comprehensive citywide model. And this is just the citywide capacity, it's like insufficient. And there's a lot of people who talk about this 5-year rainstorm. The system was originally designed, back when it was first put in, assuming a 5-year rainstorm. The problem with that is, A, it assumed that basement was used for storage because people didn't have things in their basement 100 years ago. Basements were dirt, so they assumed that as storage area. And second, we can have 3 5-year storms in one summer because it's all the mathematical probabilities of that. But if you try and explain that to a homeowner whose basement's flooded 3 times, and you're like, well, it's still for a 5-year storm, and we had 3 of them, it's hard to explain that, right? So that's why we're trying to move away from that construct. So this is the really geeky part that I barely understand. They use the walling for inflow water surfware. We went to we really went after the trunk sewer system, which is 36 inches or larger, and then obviously the rain gauge network and the ADS. And the ADS is just a detection that we use, that we put the sensors in the large sewers to monitor the flow, because we want to verify that the flow in the actual sewers is the same as what we model. So we use it as a real-life example to make sure the model is normalized. So this is the emergency wrap. So this has to do with a problem we had a few years ago. MWRD lost the Racine pumping facility, which is right at Golden Creek. They blew it out. So we looked at what the impact was of not being able, because that's it's a huge pump station, not having that, and we looked at what the impact was. So the bad news was if we had a half an inch of rainstorm in the south side, every basement on the south side of Chicago was going to flood because it covered that big an area. So we went through, used this predictive modeling to try and do some emergency planning for that and come up with potential impacts and then where we could add pumps. So we did a lot of emergency management related to that. The sort of short story, I hope nobody from IDOT's right here. The plan was we were going to actually put pumps everywhere and we were going to flood the Dan Ryan. And we were going to use the Dan Ryan as a waterway. That was the plan. We never told IDOT that's the plan. We just said that's the plan. So it was it was like, God, I hope we don't have to do this. So like literally for 2 weeks we prayed for no rain until they got the pumps back. So what? No, because it didn't rain. We rented 356-inch pumps. We had every 6-inch pump from across the nation in Chicago. And it was a little dirty secret we kept to ourselves, hoping it didn't rain. This has to do with another project for Montrose and Stone Island. And again, this is just where we use the model to help us try to figure out how to do this. This has to do with North Pump. So I'm not going to go through because this is some of the early periods. So this is, I'm going to skip through some of this so I can for time. So this is, I'm going to skip this one. So the whole idea is, on this, we sort of come up with 3 different things. You have local sewer problems, you have regional, and then you have big sewer projects. Big sewer projects would involve us working cooperatively, both in money and modeling with MWRD. All of these bigger projects, we have to coordinate with MWRD because we have to make sure their trunk sewer, their TARP system can handle our flow. So here we modeled, and you see this area where it's some green and some red, and we went towards a solution where it turns into blue, which is obviously much better. So the whole idea is the problem understood, and to get that 5-year level of service for 90% of the state. So we're seeking to try and get to the 5-year, but we're not there.
Sure won't blue doesn't mean underwater?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does. It's bad news and good news, comprehensive alternatives. So the blue is very good. Okay, so I'm not going to, this is way too much detail. Sorry. So again, the different types of categories are isolated. So that's one, we just have an undersized sewer for a small area. Regional, these are those larger costly projects that get time to target. And connecting, which is connecting these regional improvements to doing that. So we may do one small project that doesn't really help that much, another small project that doesn't help that much, and then in the 3rd year we have to do a connecting that connects those 2 to this one to make the impact work. So the whole idea is because it's so disruptive, you have to, and because it's so costly, you have to spread this over time. But we use the model to try and identify that. So this is the comprehensive solution for Calumet. So it was, this whole area was not good. And the blue shows all the areas of improvement. So by doing a regional solution, this is the Area 4 Calumet project, which you guys may be familiar with. This one is probably coming out to bid very shortly. And this has to do with, we're trying to come up with a big regional solution that would impact everything in blue. So that would be the area served by this solution. And we've worked with MWRD, we believe it's workable in terms of the timing of the TARP because they just got Fulton online, and that really increases the capacity of their storage dramatically, and that is served from this Calumet area. Calumet's their southern area, so it's 84th Street to south. So now that they have a retention, we can try and build a regional solution to meet to that Fulton solution.
And red is always bad?
Red is bad. So red, the problem is there's a river between here and there. So we can't get this area served by improving this area. So here we have to come up with another solution. So that's where red we haven't been able to impact. And this is Jeffrey Manor, as I recall. In Jeffrey Manor, the whole neighborhood is below lake levels. So we have a really hard time with that because, again, gravity and water finds its own level. The two driving principles in water management.
What is TARP?
What's that?
TARP.
This, it's not.
What is
Yeah. Oh, what is TARP?
It stands for the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan.
Yes, so it's the deep tunnel.
Tunnel and reservoir.
So, but imagine, so MWD spent a lot of money on tarp, big, and I call them big straws to the city. Well, the good news is now that they built McCook, the straw attaches to a bathtub. So the problem is before they only had 1 billion gallons worth of storage in the straw. Now with McCook, they've added 5.6 billion gallons of storage. So now the straw has a place to go. That's where their big solutions are. That was Thornton, I guess. McCook is the next one. McCook's even bigger. So McCook is in
Those are the quarries you're talking about, right?
What's that?
Quarries?
The quarries, correct.
I have another question. You said that you're 100% combined and there you are not under mandate, there's no long-term control plan for separation,
No,
and that'll stay like that going forward.
I can't see how we could ever separate. I mean, first, besides the fact that, especially in so many areas, there's not enough room in the street anymore,
Right.
is the cost is
Oh.
just enormous. And the problem is, like, for water and sewer, we have separation required between the water mains and the sewer mains.
Right,
And
that's.
we're having a hard time meeting that
Yeah, that's everywhere.
in many areas, right?
MWRD doing some of it like Howard.
What's that?
There's some separation going on with MWRD.
With MWRD, right.
But that's not
Right.
Can you say what combined separation means?
Yeah, so some cities have a separated sewer, so your sewer water is in one pipe and your stormwater is in another pipe. Ours is combined. Sewage and stormwater are combined all the time. So newer cities on the west are typically more separated, but almost everything from here east is not.
So MWRD also has a model for their TARP system. Are you guys coordinating at all between those two models?
We do. So we've tied in, we have an intergovernmental agreement that allows us to use their model, to tie into their model, and us to tie into them to use our model. But ours is much more based on the trunk system, theirs is built on the TARP system. So again, these are short-term trunk improvements, localized projects, and this start just identify, these are various projects that we've identified in just this little area, and then we look at what funding we have and what the impact is, and then how do we tie those together going forward. And again, local sewer is just sort of all the details that go into how we do this. This is one up on the North Branch. Again, more trunk seating yellow. That's a future sewer improvement project that would impact. So again, when you're talking about coordinate with them and with the TARP 2 solutions. And we're also looking at what green technologies, and I think there's a later presentation on the green technologies evaluation. Right, so we're looking at what the impacts of those are in terms of that. Again, this is what green impacts and the future models. And so this is just, I'm going to go very quickly through this. This just shows you, we look at how we pull up all the GIS data. So you're looking at what houses have connected downspouts, private parking lots, sanitary sewers, lawns, and streets. Obviously, pervious service versus impervious service. It changes the model. And then this shows the red is the house with the roofs of the houses, and we assume those are all connected downspouts. So that's bad because that water is going directly into the sewer. Whereas typically garages you see in the pink, those are typically not connected to the sewer. So although it's not a pervious area, that water is going to have to go to pervious area to get into the sewer system. So that's actually less dramatic, whereas the blue is the street, that's all impervious, that's directly going to go to the sewer. And then these are the types of restrictors that you see into the catch basins, how they work, vortex and the differences. This is the model calibration. So this is where we look at a flow analysis in the sewer to then make sure that it matches up to our model so that we make sure the model is calibrated correctly. And this is the thing that I'm hoping starts. So this is the really cool part. This is a storm event. So what you see is this is the level of which this is where the rain event begins. And see how the rain goes? And see now they've surcharged, because this is street level. So now it is surcharged over that. So now we assume this is the base level. This is street level. This is base level. This is street level. So as that rain event occurs, you see it starts slow and then boom, it dramatically goes high and dumps it over and floods all those basements. But yet it hasn't reached the street. So this is how the end result of showing how an actual rain event happens, because this is a really captured rain event. And you see it goes up, comes back down dramatically. So these are all various examples along a main sewer, along a trunk sewer. So that's how you can see how they flow out. So I know I kind of went quickly through this based on time and my knowledge, but I'm happy to answer any more questions you guys have.
We have time for a couple.
So the sensors in the pipes, you mentioned using it for validation of the models. What about for being able to evaluate it for real-time data? Is that a possibility where you can understand what's going on and maybe give advance warning to places that are in danger? Or?
No, because ultimately MWRD has the greatest control over the main trunk line sewers. So because of the way TARP is designed, so they do that. So they have sensors in there that normally are, and through all the connectors that come down from our system. So when that main straw starts to fill up, they start to shut entrances because they can't have that surcharge. So they start to close it. So they use theirs real time to start to slow down water coming into the deep tunnel because they can't take it anymore. But in terms of ours, we really can't change anything. There's nothing in our system that can change.
But I was just thinking about being able to provide people. I would imagine you could predict something if you had access to the real-time data. Where the areas are that are at risk, for example.
I mean, in terms of like,
advance notice.
I mean, maybe reverse 311, maybe, but it's really like, the problem is we're getting storms that are so localized. It's not like we get a 2-inch rainstorm that hits the city of Chicago perfectly evenly. We had a storm last summer. Wrigley Field got 4.6 inches. O'Hare got 0.6.
Yeah, well, but that's
Now,
where I think
as a crow flies 2.5 miles apart.
but that's where the sensors would be great, right? I mean, because you'd have that localized data.
Yeah, but then what do I do? So then I have to come up with a reverse 311, in theory,
Right.
to try and identify what the surface areas can be impacted. But there's so many factors in terms of the local sewer system. I don't see how we can do it. Plus, I'm not sure we get enough advance notice because the rainstorms are so big and so fast. But that's something to think about.
This is just a suggestion, I mean, not necessarily for Department of Water Management or maybe or MWRD, but have they looked at like backwater valves or overhead sewers?
We do. We talk to people about that. MWRD promotes that. The problem is it's fairly expensive,
Yeah.
and so people don't like to do it. We have those as solutions. We offer them, but trust me, I've been into a room of 900 angry people who are flooding, and I had the MWRD guy says, "Well, you should just get overhead sewers. They're only $10,000."
Well,
That didn't go over too well.
well, the possibility is they could offer some type of a grant or a 50-50 program where
Yeah.
people can do that.
Right, and that's
I
one
mean,
of the things.
when
that's looking at.
we're not under a court
Consent
order,
decree, right.
consent decree, but we have to do separation. And we do have a limited amount of funds that we offer a 50-50 program for overhead sewers.
Right, and that's why we've been promoting rain barrels, MWD promoting rain barrels, anything we can do to keep more water from surcharging the main sewer.
We have one more question back there.
It's been answered.
Okay. Great. Bill?
Does the model allow a what-if analysis? So I'm just, they're going to change the diameter of one pipe, how that would impact the rest of the system?
Yeah, so they do that, and they look at, well, the big changes they make, and we had that with the Racine facility, is what happens if we get a half-inch rainstorm over 1 hour's period? What's the impact? What's a 1-inch rainstorm over 1 hour's period? What's a 2-inch rainstorm over 2 hours period, or a 1 hour period? So they have to sit there and run each one of those different variations because they're all affected differently. So they run all of those different, and then they said tarp is half full, tarp is 3/4 full, tarp is full. If tarp is full, a 1/2-inch rainstorm floods a lot of basements. If tarp is empty, a lot of basements don't flood. So we run all of those different predictive models, hence why with like the Racine facility, we worked with MWRD of like clean out the deep tunnel as fast as possible. Because they can run sticking really fast and really expensive, or slow and cheap. And so we're like, run fast, run expensive, because then they can treat a lot more water. That's the big advantage of now that they have the quarries on, or will have one quarry and have a second quarry, is they have storage. So now they can treat during dry flow periods that water that's been retained and keep their operating, costs in terms of how much water flows through it more consistent.
Let's thank. Speaking of pervious pavement, we're going to bring in David Leopald, who's going to talk to us about the green infrastructure project at City Digital.
Yeah, absolutely. With everyone's permission, I'm going to go unplugged and just describe a little bit of background about City Digital as well as some of the work that we're doing, particularly related to green infrastructure monitoring and sensing. City Digital is a program at UI Labs that specifically looks to convene governments, academia, and industry together to solve problems in the urban built environment space. And we particularly look at technology and how it can help us better understand urban systems and how we can build new tools to enable better decisions and new products and ideas to be able to solve some of those intractable problems that no one of those groups can do alone. We work in 4 key areas: water, energy, physical infrastructure, and transportation. And in one of those areas, water, I'm happy to be able to talk about a project that we have around green infrastructure evaluation. Green infrastructure, for those not familiar with it, is a type of infrastructure, either pavements or plants, naturalized landscapes that allows you to hold on to rainwater as it hits the ground, slowing it down from its way into the combined sewer system, or diverting it entirely, allowing that water to infiltrate into the ground itself. Lots of times it can be incorporated within the built environment where space is otherwise tight. And the city of Chicago has been a strong leader in this area. So around 2006, started the Green Alley program, repaving some of our alleys with permeable pavement to allow them to be a place that holds water instead of immediately sending it to the combined sewer system. Similarly, landscape planters, bioswales, these are some of the tools that are inclusive of green infrastructure. A part of the problem that we see is that green infrastructure has a lot of potential, and the rain blocker program that Barrett talked about is certainly one of them that can hold water back from the system, so that the rain events that we're getting that are coming more often and that are more intense can sometimes overwhelm the system and result in some of the red areas that we saw in terms of the model. The question is, what's a suite of tools that you can deploy to be able to address those pain points, those spots within the system where either additional capacity is needed or water's running too quickly to what's otherwise been built there. Green infrastructure is a tool that you could put out to be able to help take the peak off the peak so that as the rain's coming quickly, you can manage it a little bit more easily and buy yourself some more time within the system. One of the problems that's been had about green infrastructure implementation is that there's a lot of history going into it. These are engineered solutions where you can determine, given amount of a storm event, how much water can be held and other things. But there's a lot of variables that are still out there. Has it been maintained frequently? What's the soil conditions before the storm? Are they already sunk? How much water can they address? There's a lot of questions about their performance that we still don't know. And I would argue that, and somewhat controversially, that some of the green infrastructure that's going in across the country is, as I would describe it, more faith-based green infrastructure. Well, it should work. There's a lot of great benefits here. I don't see why this isn't a great thing. Let's keep going. And the idea is that we can expand that and start to look at its cumulative performance. So, for example, the city of Chicago now has over 250 green alleys. I think the largest number in the entire country. Chicago has 13,000 alleys. So as we think about the impact that they can make within these larger pain points within the sewer shed, it's still a drop in the bucket, so to say. So if you were to put some serious capital investment to green infrastructure, or if you were to use it as a serious tool in combination with the gray infrastructure, the pipe infrastructure that we've already got, we need to know a lot more about it. There has been a lot of great studies and evaluation of green infrastructure itself, much of it on a site-by-site basis, and particularly within the Chicago context, not much of it continuous, where you would be able to take into account different site conditions, different cleanliness levels of the surrounding buildings, and, alleys themselves, for example. Great investment from the city, not always the cleanest places that you can find, so that the maintenance question is still one of them. The way that the City Digital Consortium has approached this challenge is to be able to say, well, what are ways that we can bring innovation, particularly from an Internet of Things approach, of new sensing, new low-cost sensing technologies, and new approaches to green infrastructure monitoring, to be able to build a network that would allow you to bring in data from all of the collective green infrastructure locations within a city, or even within a neighborhood for that matter, so that you can get data about their combined performance and understand a little bit of some of that metadata around, well, what type of green infrastructure, what's around it, what are these other pieces so that we can understand its effectiveness. And the idea is if we want to, if you believe in the faith-based approach of green infrastructure, the question is, could we layer the surface of our city with this green infrastructure as a layer in how we manage water? And can we think of that as a part of the combined system, all the way from where the rain falls to the reservoirs and treating it and beyond? How we're approaching our pilot, we're developing a pilot where we're monitoring 5 pilot sites, green infrastructure locations that the Department of Water Management and the Chicago Department of Transportation are collectively funding and building over the next 2 years. And we're installing a new suite of sensors within each of those locations, some traditional and some new. We're working with university partners at the University of Illinois to deploy some new video analytics technology, where to be able to understand and capture the gallons information, the number of water going into a catch basin, you're able to actually point a very small thumb-sized camera at the drain, and using fluid dynamics math, basically, understand from the size of the puddle and how quickly it shrinks, how many gallons went into the drain. This is a much easier way of finding out this information than putting either a weir or a flow device in the pipe itself, which is difficult to get at, hard to maneuver, and very difficult to scale, right, as you're looking at it. So we're pulling together data from these sites and communicating them up to the cloud, where we have an analytics dashboard that will be able to pull in some of that metadata about the green infrastructure sites themselves, as well as actual performance information in relative real time about how those pieces of green infrastructure have responded to a given rain event. And the idea is that from that, not only will we know the effectiveness of those individual green infrastructure locations, we'll be able to look at their combined effectiveness, so that if you wanted to take that data and export it into some of the modeling that the city and others are doing, that you would be able to, with more reliance and more accurate knowledge about its performance, understand how an investment in green infrastructure could compare to other options that could be considered in managing these pinch points, the red areas or the tight spots within the system itself. So we're thrilled to be working with our partners within the consortium on it, Microsoft included, University of Illinois, and several others, to be able to test out not only our new sensing technologies, but this idea that we can gather in one place information about green infrastructure performance data that could be scaled